Of course, like I said, there's a number of local suppliers that are already servicing the industry. But we have to look beyond packaging. We have to look beyond trucking. That cannot be considered economic empowerment. We have to ensure that we are fully integrated into that supply chain. If I give you an example, I just said we produce 76,000 pairs of jeans a day. Every pair of jeans needs zippers. Every pair of jeans needs buttons and probably hangers. Why aren't we supplying those? Why do we have to import zippers from Swaziland? Buttons, I think making buttons is as simple as, I don't know, it's the most basic technology that anyone can come up with. But of course, this will not happen on their own. There has to be someone, there has to be some way of facilitating this, and this is where LNDC could come in. In addition to putting together this incentives package, we could also adopt a very aggressive matchmaking scheme, if I can call it that. And the idea here will be simple. Any potential investor that wants to set up in Lesotho, we find a company, a local company that has a potential to partner with that. But of course, the local partner, in most cases, will not have the finance to be able to secure that equity. So then that goes without saying that before we do that, we have to make that finance accessible. And I think between the government and LNDC, we can be able to set up that financing facility. We should be able to set up those equity funds that ensure that to some extent minimum equity of 30% in these investments is taken up by local investments. And this will be paid off within a very short period of time. They are not grants, they are not, it's not free money, it's a loan. But it's a loan that any businessman or the average businessman here will not be able to get if he was to go to the bank. But the government has the capacity to absorb the risk, and will be able to provide that guarantee, that facility. And I think if we were to do that, that would have solved the biggest challenge that we face. The other challenge, also related to access to finance, relates to small and medium enterprises. When you walk into a bank, like anywhere in the world, they will ask you for a balance sheet. And if you've just started, you're an informal businessman, where are you going to get a balance sheet? There has to be a new look at some of the products we have today that are aimed at small and medium enterprises. Of course, there are new ones coming to the market. Standard Bank has just launched its product. It has to be commended for that. But at the end of the day, there's still a significant number of small businesses that fall through the cracks, which needs to be captured. And one way would be for the government also to see how we can work with banks to mitigate their exposure and make sure they on lend to these informal traders. Because at the end of the day, the portion of our economy that is in the informal sector is actually bigger than what is in the formal sector. So imagine what that would do just from a revenue perspective. Imagine what LRA will be able to get if we're able to cover those people and make sure that we give them the capacity to grow. And speaking of LRA, there has to be a rethink, I think, on the tax structure, particularly as it relates to SMEs. The idea being that if you allow a business to grow, I hope Tabo is not here. The idea being that if you give a business a chance to grow, that's future revenue. So if that company does not grow, it means it's revenue forgone. I think it's just basic calculation. So our incentive, and like I always say to my colleagues, we are not in the business of shutting down businesses. We're in the business of helping businesses grow. So if it means having to bend backwards to accommodate them, as long as you give them the tools, then you will see that within a very short period of time, you would have developed quite a vibrant small and medium sector, which can drive this economy. I mean, if you look at the experience of countries like Japan, like Germany, they're driven by small businesses. Car suppliers in Japan are corner shops, what we call Shopazama China, the same size. They do components. So it shows the potential of what small businesses can do. We should also rethink our cost structure, our pricing structure, in as far as infrastructure in particular is concerned, but also utilities. Electricity costs, internet connectivity, I don't even want to mention it, are amongst the highest in the region. Telephone costs, to call somebody, if you are a small business trying to chase up a deal in Mozambique or in Botswana, it's prohibitive. If you want to fly to Botswana, it's almost 6,000 rands. It costs the same as flying to London. So how is it that we can claim to be providing support to business? Other countries have adopted open sky policies. You can fly between Paris and London for $45. Why does it cost 4,000 to go to Johannesburg? It doesn't make sense. And unless government and its institutions takes a proactive stance and says, even if the rest of SADC will not follow, we'll do it for ourselves. Every revolution is started by a small group of people, and the rest follow when they see that there's momentum. And that is the way we should look at it. Another key area where I think we've missed an opportunity, and where I think government has the chance to actually transform this economy, is on our procurement policy. Unless we have a fully enforceable regime which clearly articulates the minimum content in any government project that has to be done by local suppliers and service providers, we will not be able to get it. And if you take just one industry, mining. The mining, we have a very small mining industry here. But that industry, if we were to say that minimum 50% of all services they procure, and I'm not talking the usual load and haul where people rent out trucks, that's not procurement. I'm talking from mining, the actual mining operation itself, to the basic operations, whether it's providing protective wear and everything that goes with it. Imagine if 50% of that could be procured locally. What it would do to this economy? It would change it forever. I know one company that spends in excess of 20 million rands a month just on diesel. Now imagine what the entire industry spends on energy. And anyway, why are we powering an industry with diesel? Why isn't that government, if it does not have the resources to do so, allows the private sector to step in, build the infrastructure, and provide the electricity? You see, it doesn't make sense. But this is the way things are. Imagine if that minimum 50% could be enforced across the board. Imagine roads. We procure almost 95% of everything we consume. So imagine what that would do for this economy. Imagine what it would do for SMEs. But it is not happening because even where the procurement guidelines are in place, it's not enforced. So we need to find a way to make it enforceable. With mining, I think we have an advantage because we don't have a mining policy. I think the process is just about to start. So we have a chance to load it with the right balance of obligations on the part of investors and their rights. We are not saying that we're going to strangle them with burdens and make sure that they do not enjoy their profits, but we're saying that there has to be a way to ensure that there's a trickle-down effect on the benefits of that sector. And right now, it is on a voluntary basis. Each mining house does what it can. We have one, if I give you an example of a situation that I think cannot be allowed in any society, but we have it here, where you have one company dominating an entire industry. It's obscene in my view, but we allow it. And we cannot talk about empowerment if we are not bold. We cannot talk about empowerment if we are not willing to make difficult decisions. In Botswana, they have their own empowerment programs, and they were criticized for it. Any company that wins any government contract over 50 million pula has to list on the stock exchange. Minimum 30% listing is required. And that ensures that a significant portion of that stays in Botswana. Why can't we do that? South Africa, they have their own black economic empowerment. Like it or not, it has forced companies to conform. And we need to think about that. we're not going to change all this if we try and take a very soft approach and tell ourselves that the market will decide, we'll let the market take care of itself, and we will find a way to accommodate it. It's not going to happen. We need to take this bold stance, and I think this is the time. If we cannot do it today, I don't know how we think we can do it in 5 years' time. We've sorted out the politics. I think everybody commends us for our politics. So what's left to fix is the economy. And we have to fix it. And I think we have the capacity to do so. Another sector which some of my friends may not be happy to hear what I say about it, that needs to at least go beyond rhetoric and show some action, is the banking sector. We cannot talk about using the private sector to drive this economy. We cannot talk about realizing the full potential of a private sector-led strategy when they don't have access to money. Finance is what keeps this world going around. Without finance, forget it. There is no way they will survive. And they are competing with companies in other parts of this region that are fully financed, that have long credit lines which they can tap into and are able to compete with them. And they, in the meantime, do not even have access to the most basic of these facilities. We saw in South Africa a few years ago, there was a debate about the unbanked masses in South Africa that nobody wanted to touch because they either don't have proof of residence or they don't have proof of gainful employment, and therefore they're just floating around with nowhere to put their money. Whether it was $100 or 1,000 rands, nobody wanted to touch them. And the government forced them. And overnight, innovative schemes were put in place. Banks came up with such innovative ideas, and these people can walk into a bank and open an account. They can go and walk into a bank and get a credit. And their credit demands or requests are very small. And the most amazing thing also, which you will never hear, is that the default rate in the informal sector is a fraction of what it is in the formal sector. You know, small businesses and poor people pay their loans. It's the big companies and the millionaires that default. So I'm convinced that there is a lot that we can do if we have the banking sector working hand in hand with government, working hand in hand with other government institutions. And we have the advantage that all our banks are subsidiaries of big multinationals, which means that they have access to huge amounts of collective experience in a diverse collection of markets. Nedbank is all over Africa, whether it's directly or through its associates, EcoBank, FNB, Standard Bank, all of them have this experience. And the amazing thing is that in most of these countries where they're operating, there's some of these products are already there. So we need to make the case. And it does not mean that we're becoming aggressive to the industry. No. We're just saying that without the participation of the banking sector, there is no private sector. Government can provide guarantees, can provide equity funds and all that, but at the end of the day, it starts and ends with the banking sector. Trade finance, the smallest default rate in the banking sector, 0.001%. But nobody will give you 100,000 trade finance facility if you don't have a balance sheet. So how are we expecting these people these businesses to thrive? So I think there's a missed opportunity there that we need to tap into, and it can only happen if there is a concerted effort, there is a strategy, a well-clarified strategy with expectations. And of course, any industry that takes a proactive approach to this should be rewarded. And government has the capacity to reward them without undermining its revenue base. We can give them incentives that would make it easy for them to be able to do that. The other point, and this is my last point, which I think as an economy, everything we do starts and ends with human capital. If we don't invest in skills, if we don't invest in our people, we will always remain stagnant. We cannot want to run and play with the big boys if we don't have the skills. It's like going into a gunfight with a knife. They'll kill you.